I clutched the steering wheel tighter as my phone buzzed in the cup holder again, lighting up the darkened interior of my car. My family group chat, titled The Morgans, was already filling up with subtle digs and reminders about tonight's annual dinner, an event I'd rather skip than endure another round of thinly veiled criticism. My stomach tightened with the familiar dread of seeing my parents' disappointed stares, the patronizing smiles, and hearing my brother talk endlessly about himself. I pulled up to a red light, glancing quickly at the notifications. My mother's latest text popped up, sarcastically cheerful. "Randi, do try to be on time tonight. Jason's big news is very important, and we don't want distractions. Love, Mom." I rolled my eyes and tossed the phone onto the passenger seat. It was always Jason's night, Jason's news, Jason's everything. Always. But tonight, they didn't know it would be different. Because this year, I finally had something incredible to celebrate. Something entirely mine. Something I'd fought tooth and nail for, without their knowledge or interference. Yet a small part of me wondered, would it even matter? Or would they still find a way to turn my achievement into another disappointment? Before I tell you how my hard-earned dream home, a symbol of my freedom and independence, triggered a bitter legal battle that would tear apart what was left of my relationship with my family, let me know where you're watching from and hit subscribe if you've ever overcome something for your family. Trust me, you have no idea what they'll do once they find out you've succeeded without. My name is Randi, I'm 31 years old, and I've been invisible in my family since the day Jason was born. From childhood, I had always felt like an extra. Tolerated but never truly seen. I was the quiet achiever, the straight-A student, the artistic kid with sketches covering every notebook and textbook margin, dreaming about buildings I'd one day design. But none of my achievements ever seemed good enough to compete with Jason's barely adequate ones. My mother, Sharon, was a woman who measured success by appearances, and my father, Dale, valued status above anything genuine. They proudly displayed Jason's mediocre hockey trophies and attendance awards, while my art competition ribbons were shoved into a shoebox, gathering dust under my childhood bed. Tonight, I'd have to brace myself again, ready to smile through the pain, nod along to Jason's latest inflated announcement, and pretend I wasn't desperate to shout about the biggest accomplishment of my life. But I'd learned the hard way not to seek their approval. It never came without conditions, usually accompanied by reminders of my supposed shortcomings. As the light turned green, I took a deep breath and accelerated forward, deciding that tonight I would not let their predictable disdain crush me. My quiet triumph, a beautiful craftsman-style home in a revitalized historical neighborhood I'd meticulously saved for, was worth more than any half-hearted praise from my parents. It symbolized everything I'd built on my own, away from their suffocating expectations and crushing disappointment. For a moment, I imagined myself announcing my achievement at dinner, visualizing the stunned silence, the shock on their faces, maybe even a grudging acknowledgement from Dad. But deep down I knew better. I knew they'd twist it, make it small and insignificant, or worse, resent me for stepping outside their narrow vision of success. My phone vibrated again, another text, another reminder of where I stood in their world. But tonight, I wasn't going to let their poison seep into my happiness. Not this time. I parked outside my apartment building, glancing up at the small, dimly lit window I'd stared out of countless nights, plotting and planning. My sanctuary was tiny, cluttered with books, architectural models, and thrifted furniture, but every corner was a testament to my independence and determination. My heart swelled with pride, mixed with anxiety about tonight. I was done waiting in the shadows for approval. Tonight, I was going to face them head-on, holding tight to the knowledge that I'd finally secured something no one could diminish, my own place in the world. If only I'd known then how quickly they'd come after everything I'd built, ready to claim it for themselves, ready to destroy my newfound happiness in ways I could never have imagined. When I was 9 years old, I proudly came home from school clutching my first-place art ribbon, practically bouncing with excitement. The award had been pinned carefully onto my drawing, a detailed, whimsical rendition of the city skyline I'd painstakingly sketched in colored pencils. I imagined my parents' faces lighting up with pride, maybe even placing the artwork on the fridge beside Jason's ever-growing collection of mediocre crayon scribbles. Instead, I walked into a kitchen bustling with preparations for Jason's latest hockey team dinner. My mother, Sharon, glanced briefly at the ribbon, her eyes scanning dismissively before turning back to icing the celebratory cake. "That's nice, Randy," she murmured absently. "Put it away for now. Jason's teammates will be here soon, and we don't need the clutter." The sting of her casual dismissal hit harder than a slap. I hid the ribbon in my pocket, retreating quietly to my room, tears blurring the proud skyline until it became nothing but a smudge. Moments like these weren't isolated incidents. They were a continuous pattern that had defined my childhood. At every turn, my accomplishments were overshadowed by Jason's ordinary successes. The problem wasn't Jason himself. He was oblivious, mostly harmless, and cluelessly accepting of the family's worshipful attention. The issue lay with my parents' stubborn determination to elevate him at my expense. When Jason managed to scrape together a C in biology, my parents threw a full-on pizza party. My straight-A report cards barely earned me a distracted nod from my father Dale, before he turned back to praising Jason's determination in sports, despite the fact Jason mostly warmed the bench. Jason's hockey trophies crowded every shelf, prominently displayed, while my own awards accumulated silently in my closet, like quiet reminders of worthlessness, unacknowledged and unseen. Even family vacations became exercises in Jason worship. One summer, during a trip to Niagara Falls, I discovered an architectural exhibit showcasing plans for new bridges and observation decks. My heart raced with excitement as I studied the designs, imagining my own future as an architect. When I begged my parents to visit, my father's bored expression made his feelings clear. "Jason wouldn't enjoy something like that," Dale sighed, steering us toward yet another souvenir shop selling overpriced hockey jerseys. And just like that, another spark of my passion was quietly extinguished. Birthdays highlighted this imbalance more starkly than anything. My 11th birthday gift was a used bike, carelessly painted over and still sticky with paint. "Just be thankful you got something," Sharon scolded, sensing my disappointment. 3 months later, Jason received a brand new mountain bike complete with all the gear. My father's explanation was simple, yet devastating. "Your brother needs this to feel confident. You're already independent enough." I learned to internalize their dismissals, to hide my excitement, to temper expectations. By high school, I developed a quiet resilience born from perpetual invisibility. Friends would sometimes comment that I never invited them over. They didn't realize I was embarrassed by how easily my parents ignored me, how quickly they'd redirect any conversation toward Jason's latest triumph, real or imagined. My guidance counselor, a perceptive woman named Miss Rhonda Pickens, once praised my determination during college planning meetings. "You have a gift, Randy," she told me earnestly, reviewing my sketches for a scholarship application. "You see potential in spaces most people overlook. You could really go far in architecture." When she tried to speak with my parents about it, they responded with cold disinterest. Later, I overheard my father mutter to my mother, "Scholarships? Waste of time. She'll probably end up married and staying home anyway." That moment changed something in me. I began to realize the depth of their sabotage. My dreams weren't just ignored, they were actively discouraged. From that day on, I vowed to create something so powerful, so undeniably mine, that no one, not even my parents, could dismiss it. As high school graduation approached, I watched Jason effortlessly pick his prestigious college, tuition fully covered by my parents. I enrolled in community college instead, quietly mapping out my own path through hours of extra shifts, late-night studying, and endless budgeting. Every dollar earned felt like a quiet act of rebellion, every step forward a silent victory. I moved out at 19, unnoticed and unmissed. I still remember my mother's parting gift, a small box of mismatched dishes. "Just until you settle down," she said dismissively. Settle down. As if my dreams were just temporary distractions from the life she envisioned for me, a life firmly within Jason's shadow. Now, as I prepared once again to face my family, I couldn't help but recall those moments vividly. Tonight was about more than just another painful family dinner. It was a confrontation decades in the making, fueled by memories of invisibility and neglect. but tonight, for the first time, I carried a secret they couldn't dismiss. I had built something remarkable in silence, a success so large that when they finally saw it, they'd be forced to reckon with the daughter they'd ignored for far too long. I was finally stepping out of Jason's shadow, into my own hard-earned spotlight. I just hoped the glow was strong enough to withstand their inevitable attempts to snuff it out. When I left home at 19, independence wasn't glamorous, it was gritty. The tiny studio apartment I rented smelled faintly of mildew and stale cigarettes, with cracked tiles and thin walls that let in every sound from my noisy neighbors. But for the first time in my life, I was breathing freely, away from the suffocating weight of my parents' disregard. Every morning at 4:45 a.m., my alarm jolted me awake. I dragged myself to the local coffee shop, my first of 3 daily shifts, where I learned how to pull espresso shots and plaster on polite smiles despite aching feet and raw exhaustion. Afternoons were spent rushing to community college classes, notebook pages filling rapidly with detailed sketches and architectural notes, fueled by discounted day-old pastries and too much caffeine. At night, I hustled tables at a diner downtown. Every customer complaint, spilled drink, or greasy plate reminded me what I was fighting for. Each dollar earned felt powerful, a building block toward the future I dreamed of but never dared speak aloud, not even to my few close friends. Those first years, my social life was practically non-existent. Friends from high school moved on, married, or pursued easier paths, but a small group formed around me. Co-workers like Sasha, a blunt but fiercely loyal waitress who encouraged me to stay focused, and Felix, the sarcastically sweet barista who kept me laughing during early morning shifts. They became my support system, the chosen family I'd never realized I desperately needed. One night after work, Sasha and I sat in a diner booth counting tips and nursing watery coffee. She eyed my battered notebook filled with sketches of houses and offices I'd never shown anyone. "You know," she said bluntly, flipping through the pages, "you can actually do this, Randi. Stop hiding these. Go after it. Hard." Her words stuck with me. That night, lying in bed staring at the cracked ceiling, I realized she was right. I'd been quietly building a secret dream, like one I kept hidden out of fear my parents would find a way to ruin it, even from a distance. So I decided to act. Every spare penny went directly into savings. I kept meticulous records of every tip, every paycheck, every bonus. My diet became a monotonous routine of ramen noodles, cheap frozen meals, and leftovers scavenged from work. I skipped outings, rarely bought clothes, and never indulged in anything beyond absolute necessities. It wasn't deprivation, it was determination. When I transferred to a state university for architectural design, the stakes grew higher. I landed an internship at a prestigious architectural firm, my first step into the professional world. The days blurred into endless cycles of work, study, and planning, but my heart soared every time my designs were praised, quietly validating the years of unnoticed effort. Eventually, I secured a full-time position at the firm, my title slowly evolving from intern to junior architect, then to project lead. My salary increased incrementally, but I stayed disciplined. Every raise, every bonus, every freelance job went straight to my house fund. No exceptions. The moment I realized I'd saved enough was one I'll never forget. Sitting alone in my cramped studio apartment late one night, my bank statement glowing on the laptop screen, my breath caught sharply. After over a decade of grinding, scraping, and sacrificing, I'd done it. I had enough for a down payment. Hands shaking, heart racing, I called Sasha. "It's happening," I whispered, barely believing the words as they left my mouth. "I can buy a house." "I never doubted you," she replied warmly. "Not even for a second." With Sasha's encouragement, I found Linda, a realtor who specialized in first-time homebuyers. She was patient, endlessly optimistic, and understood the careful balance of budget and dream. It took weeks of frustrating searches and dashed hopes before Linda finally called one bright Sunday morning with news of a listing that had just appeared. A small, craftsman-style home in a slowly revitalizing historic neighborhood, a bit rough around the edges but brimming with possibility. The moment I saw it, I knew. The weathered wood, the welcoming porch, the ornate crown molding hidden beneath peeling paint, it all whispered promise. It was more than a house, it was a reflection of me, imperfect but resilient, neglected but still beautiful beneath years of disregard. Within days, my offer was accepted. Holding the keys in trembling fingers for the first time, tears blurred my vision. This place was entirely mine, earned solely through my labor and resolve. For once my future belonged exclusively to me. But the excitement was short-lived. 2 days after I closed on the house, my phone rang at work. An unfamiliar number. A courier waited impatiently downstairs, handing me a thick, official-looking envelope. My stomach tightened as I tore it open, reading words that sent chills down my spine. Summons for civil action. Plaintiffs, Dale and Sharon Morgan. Defendant, Randi Morgan. They claimed my new home was theirs, that I'd wrongfully acquired the property meant for Jason, their golden child, the heir to a legacy I'd never been part of. Standing stunned and shaking in the lobby, clutching papers filled with accusations and betrayal, I realized the family I'd silently defied for so many years had finally noticed me. But not for the reasons I'd always hoped. This wasn't the recognition I'd dreamed of, it was war. I stared blankly at the stack of documents spread across my kitchen counter, the words blurring together into a fog of disbelief and anxiety. Legal jargon, accusations, threats. My parents, Sharon and Dale, were actually suing me. After years of treating me as invisible, they were finally acknowledging me, but in the cruelest possible way, claiming I'd stolen Jason's inheritance, a house they'd never mentioned, never owned, never cared about. Until now. The summons trembled slightly in my hands as I reread their demands, each sentence more ludicrous than the last. $500,000 or relinquish ownership of my hard-earned home, the property that symbolized my entire adult struggle for independence. It felt like a bad joke, a twisted prank I kept hoping would end if I stared long enough. It didn't. I sank down onto a bar stool, my heart pounding in my ears. This was worse than I'd ever imagined. All those years of silent sabotage, emotional neglect, and invisible barriers, they had been preparing me for a fight I hadn't even known was coming. As I sat paralyzed, my phone buzzed again, snapping me out of my shock. Another text from Jason, oblivious as ever. Looking forward to seeing you tonight, sis. Big news. You're gonna be impressed. Tonight. The annual Morgan family dinner, the torturous tradition I dreaded every year, was suddenly looming larger than ever. How was I supposed to sit across from my parents and pretend everything was normal, while knowing they'd deliberately plotted to take away everything I'd worked for? I briefly considered skipping altogether, but a quiet anger began to burn deep within me, smoldering slowly into resolve. If they wanted a confrontation, I wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing me hide. I'd show up and face them head-on, meeting their hypocrisy with the dignity they'd never offered me. Pulling myself together, I dressed in my usual understated style. Simple black pants and a muted blouse, nothing flashy. No matter what, I wouldn't allow them the satisfaction of seeing me rattled or weak. I glanced at my reflection in the hallway mirror, seeing determination replacing the anxiety in my eyes. Tonight, I was ready for their worst. When I pulled into the driveway of my parents' pristine suburban home, the air felt thick with dread. The perfect lawn, impeccably maintained flower beds, and white picket fence all seemed strangely hostile, a facade masking the bitterness lurking just beneath the surface. As I stepped inside, the familiar scent of my mother's perfume and my father's cologne filled my nostrils, triggering an almost visceral discomfort. Sharon greeted me first, her smile tight and strained. "Oh, Randi, you made it," she said with pointed relief, checking her watch for emphasis. "We were worried you'd forget." Again, I forced a polite smile, biting back 1,000 retorts. "Wouldn't miss it for the world," I replied coolly. In the dining room, Dale nodded stiffly, barely glancing in my direction. "Good of you to join us," he muttered, his tone dripping with subtle reproach. Jason predictably dominated the room. He hugged me with exaggerated enthusiasm, oblivious to my tension. "Randi, you're gonna flip when you hear my news. Promotion, big salary bump, company car, the whole 9 yards. Sharon beamed, her pride radiant. "Isn't it wonderful? Your brother has worked so hard." The irony made my jaw tighten painfully. Jason's hard work usually meant my parents pulling strings behind the scenes, something they'd never bothered to do for me. The meal passed in predictable agony, filled with Jason's self-congratulatory monologues and my parents' endless praise. Each compliment felt like a blade twisting slowly. Occasionally, Dale would turn the conversation toward me, questions carefully laced with judgment. "So, Randi," he began casually slicing into his steak. Still enjoying that architecture hobby? Career, I corrected firmly. And yes, very much. Dale hummed dismissively. Shame it's not more financially stable. Maybe Jason could help you with some job leads? Jason nodded earnestly, oblivious to the insult. Totally, sis, just say the word. I swallowed hard, fury simmering quietly beneath my composed exterior. I had more success than any of them knew, but I wasn't about to share it here, at this toxic table. As dessert was cleared away, Dale suddenly cleared his throat dramatically, signaling silence around the table. Randi, he began solemnly, eyes cold. Your mother and I have been discussing something important. You've continually chosen a path we can't support. We've decided it's best to formally separate ourselves from your decisions. I stared at him blankly, stunned. Are you disowning me? I asked, incredulous. Sharon dabbed her eyes theatrically. It's for the best, dear. You're clearly determined to defy everything we value. Jason looked stunned, but Dale continued firmly. We've also initiated legal action regarding that house you wrongly purchased. That property was intended for Jason, a Morgan legacy you selfishly took. Jason's jaw dropped. Wait, what house? The room spun slightly as humiliation surged through me. Their cruelty knew no limits. I opened my mouth to respond, but suddenly my phone vibrated urgently in my pocket. Seeing my lawyer's name flash across the screen, I stood abruptly. Excuse me, I murmured, stepping into the hallway and answering quickly. Randi, my lawyer said excitedly, voice breathless with urgency. You won't believe what we just discovered about your property. This changes everything. My heart raced wildly, adrenaline surging. Tell me. And in the next breath, everything I'd suffered through my entire life was about to be turned upside down. I pressed the phone closer to my ear, my pulse quickening as my lawyer, Nadine Holcomb, spoke rapidly. Randi, we just uncovered something incredible. The property records for your house have revealed a significant historical connection. Your grandparents, your mother's parents, originally owned that home decades ago. I froze, the hallway suddenly spinning around me, sounds from the dining room growing distant. My grandparents? That couldn't be right. My parents had never mentioned any family connection to this house. Not once. Are you sure, Nadine? I asked breathlessly, leaning against the wall for support. Absolutely certain, she affirmed confidently. The title traces directly back to your maternal grandparents, Vera and Walter Simmons. They built that house in 1947. It was sold shortly after Vera's death, but it's unmistakably the same property. Your parents would have known this. My stomach churned as realization dawned. My parents' lawsuit wasn't just absurd, it was cruelly calculated. They knew exactly what they'd done, and exactly why they'd targeted my house, because to them, it represented their warped family legacy, something they'd deliberately hidden from me, but apparently promised Jason. My purchase had inadvertently robbed them of control over the narrative they'd created. Randi? Nadine prompted gently. Are you all right? I exhaled slowly, trying to steady my shaking hands. I'll manage. What does this mean legally? It means their lawsuit is practically baseless. They forfeited any legal claim to the property decades ago when they sold it, but emotionally and psychologically, they're clearly trying to manipulate you into relinquishing it voluntarily. My guess is they expected you'd fold under pressure. Anger surged through me, hot and fierce. They'd underestimated me again, just as they'd done my entire life. Well, they're wrong, I told Nadine firmly. I'll fight this as long as I have to. Good, Nadine said warmly. We'll meet tomorrow to prepare our response. In the meantime, hold your ground. Hanging up, I drew a deep, steadying breath, bracing myself to return to the table. The initial shock had faded, replaced by an icy determination. This dinner was no longer just about enduring my parents' contempt, it was about confronting them directly, forcing them to face the hypocrisy they'd hidden behind for so long. When I re-entered the dining room, silence descended immediately, tension hanging thickly in the air. Dale's face was rigid. Sharon's eyes nervously darted between Jason and me, and Jason just stared, utterly confused. What was that about? Dale demanded coldly, suspicion clouding his gaze. Nothing you need to worry about right now, I replied evenly, sliding back into my seat, refusing to offer further explanation. His eyebrows twitched in irritation. Jason cleared his throat, trying to break the tension. Randi, seriously, what's going on with this house they're talking about? Nobody mentioned this to me. Ask Mom and Dad, I said pointedly, meeting my mother's eyes. She looked away guiltily. Apparently they had plans for it. Big plans. Sharon shifted uncomfortably, her hands twisting her napkin. Jason, darling, it's just that your father always envisioned that property as yours someday. It holds such significance for our family. Significance? I interrupted, my voice tight with barely restrained anger. You mean the significance you never once mentioned to me? The significance you hid deliberately until the moment I finally earned something you couldn't control? Watch your tone, Dale growled sharply. You have no right. No right? I stood abruptly, adrenaline surging. I have every right. Every single dollar that bought that house was earned through my own sweat and sacrifice. Every moment of my life, I've had to fight to be seen by you, to matter half as much as Jason's slightest achievement. Now you dare to sue me, claiming I stole a legacy you deliberately hid from me? Jason looked horrified. Mom, Dad, what the hell? You seriously sued Randi? Sharon's eyes filled with tears, an expression I'd seen countless times, strategically deployed to evoke sympathy. We were protecting you, Jason, ensuring your future. My future? Jason snapped incredulously. By attacking my sister? By lying to me? To us both? Enough! Dale roared, his face flushed with anger and embarrassment. This discussion is over. Randi, you've made your choice. Deal with the consequences. No, Dad, I replied calmly, surprised by the strength in my voice. You've made your choice years ago. You've chosen manipulation and control over genuine family. I'm choosing something different now. My own life, free from your twisted expectations. Every bit, I said quietly, feeling oddly vulnerable under his admiration. Every dollar, every paint stroke. Jason nodded slowly, taking in the evidence of my dedication. I guess I've been pretty blind, haven't I? Jason, it's not, I began, but he cut me off gently. No, Randi, let me say this, he insisted earnestly. Growing up, I thought things were normal. Mom and Dad praised me constantly, so I assumed that was just how things were. Honestly, I never noticed how they treated you, not until tonight. It was cruel, and I didn't realize how deep it went. I studied him, cautiously hopeful. Did you really have no idea? He shook his head solemnly. I knew they had high expectations, but suing you? Lying about family history? Hiding your achievements? I had no clue it was that bad. I'm sorry, Randi. Really. The sincerity in his voice broke something inside me. For the first time, Jason seemed truly aware, genuinely sorry. It wasn't a fix, but it was a start. Thank you, I said softly, the tension in my chest easing slightly. It means something to hear you say that. He hesitated again, clearly uncomfortable. They told me after you left that if I supported you, I'd lose everything they've ever given me. Money, job contacts, everything. They basically disowned me too, conditionally, at least. The irony twisted bitterly. My parents' conditional love extended even to their golden child. What are you going to do? I asked gently. Jason straightened, a faint flicker of resolve crossing his face. I'm gonna stand by you. You're my sister, Randi. This house is yours, you earned it. If that means losing their support, so be it. Gratitude flooded through me, but I tempered it cautiously. I'd learned long ago that family support often came with strings attached. Still, this was Jason's first genuine step out of their shadow. As we sat in silence, my phone lit up again, Nadine's name flashing urgently. I excused myself, heart thumping wildly. Nadine? Randi, we've got another problem, she said swiftly. Your parents' lawyer just filed an emergency injunction to freeze renovations and occupancy until the case is resolved. They're escalating this aggressively. Frustration surged through me, my stomach tightening. Can they even do that? It's shaky, but they've convinced a judge there might be historical preservation issues. We'll fight it, but it could delay your move-in for months, Nadine warned grimly. I just wanted you to know right away. Hanging up, I clenched my fists, the fragile peace I'd just begun to find shattering instantly. Jason watched anxiously, sensing my sudden distress. What's wrong? They've managed to freeze renovations, I muttered bitterly. They're blocking me from moving in, claiming preservation concerns. Jason's eyes widened incredulously. They're really not going to stop, are they? Apparently not, I sighed wearily, anger flaring again. They want control at any cost. He sat quietly, thoughtful. We'll fight this, Randi. You're not alone this time. I studied him, touched by his sincerity but wary of trusting too quickly. Still, Having Jason's support felt strangely comforting, like a bridge built across years of enforced rivalry. Before he left, Jason paused by the door, looking back thoughtfully. "For what it's worth, Randi, this house feels right with you in it. Grandma Vera would have been proud to see you here, fighting for something you built yourself." When the door closed behind him, I sank back into my chair, letting his words sink in. Grandma Vera, a woman I'd never known, whose home I'd unwittingly reclaimed, was now somehow an ally in spirit, a symbol of quiet rebellion against family control. As midnight approached, I stood alone in my partially renovated living room, the old hardwood beneath my feet creaking gently in reassurance. The home, still imperfect but undeniably mine, felt like a living testament to my struggle, resilience, and the strength I'd discovered within. My parents might have escalated the war, determined to strip away everything I'd achieved. But tonight, they'd unknowingly given me something they'd always withheld: acknowledgement. For once they'd noticed me, not as the invisible daughter they'd disregarded, but as a formidable opponent they'd underestimated. It was a fight I'd never sought, but now that it had arrived, I wasn't backing down. Because finally, I had something real to fight for. Not their approval or conditional love, but a life defined on my terms. Secured within these walls that whispered of both the past and a future I alone would shape. Tonight, the battle lines were drawn clearly. But for the first time, I felt truly ready to meet them head-on. The following days blurred into a relentless cycle of legal meetings, anxious phone calls, and restless nights. Nadine and her legal team meticulously prepared our defense, combing through property records, historical archives, and emails for any hint of evidence that could discredit my parents' claims. The injunction had turned my dream home into a frozen battleground. No renovations allowed, no occupancy permitted until the courts decided. Each time I drove past, seeing the halted renovations, my stomach twisted into tight knots of frustration. Every delayed repair felt like a personal attack, another victory handed to parents who had already taken far too much. Despite the legal turmoil, I continued showing up at work, refusing to let my family drama spill over into my professional life. But whispers traveled fast through office corridors, sympathetic glances, and hushed conversations following my every move. Though intended kindly, the extra attention felt suffocating, a reminder of just how public my private battle had become. One afternoon, while buried deep in architectural sketches at my office, an unexpected visitor appeared in my doorway. Glancing up, startled, I found myself staring into the friendly face of my senior partner, Josie McGregor, a formidable woman known for her blunt honesty and fierce loyalty. "Got a minute?" Josie asked casually, stepping into my cluttered office and closing the door behind her. I straightened nervously, nodding. "Of course." She sat across from me, her eyes sharp yet filled with genuine concern. "Randi, I heard about the legal mess with your family. I know you're probably exhausted from all the noise around it." My shoulders slumped slightly, relief mixing with embarrassment. "It's definitely complicated." Josie waved dismissively. "Families often are, but listen, your work here speaks for itself. You have this entire firm's backing. Whatever support you need, legally or otherwise, just say the word. You don't have to handle this alone." Gratitude surged through me, catching in my throat. Josie's support was unexpected, yet exactly what I needed at this moment. "Thank you," I whispered, managing a small, sincere smile. "It really means a lot." Josie leaned forward, eyes twinkling mischievously. "Plus, if you need someone to intimidate your parents' lawyers, I'm famously scary in courtrooms." I laughed softly, feeling lighter for the first time in days. "I'll definitely keep that in mind." The humor faded gently as Josie's expression turned serious again. "Just remember, Randi, you earned your success here. Nobody can take that from you. Certainly not a pair of entitled parents using legal threats to control you." Her words lingered with me long after she left. Josie was right. I had built a career, earned respect, and secured financial independence on my own terms. No lawsuit, however spiteful, could erase those achievements. Later that evening, alone at my small apartment, another unexpected call jolted me from my thoughts. The screen lit up with Jason's name and my heart immediately clenched. "Jason, is everything okay?" "Sort of," Jason sighed heavily. "I just got off the phone with Mom and Dad. They're doubling down, saying they'll drop the lawsuit if you quietly give them the house. They're counting on you folding under pressure." A bitter laugh escaped me. Clearly, they don't know me very well. That's the thing, Jason said firmly. I think they do, and that's what scares them. You're stronger than they ever expected, and it's shaking them up. You know Dad hates losing control. Then he better brace himself, I replied, my voice steady despite the exhaustion creeping in. Because he's not getting control back this time. Jason hesitated briefly. Randy, there's something else. Dad made it clear that if I publicly support you during the trial, I'm completely cut off, permanently. My breath caught sharply, dread pooling heavily in my stomach. Jason, you don't have to. No, listen, he interrupted firmly. They don't get to decide this for me. You're my sister. You deserve this home. And I'm done being their puppet. The sincerity in Jason's voice sent a rush of warmth through me, quieting the ache of lingering doubt. Thank you, I said softly, grateful beyond words. As we hung up, a strange sense of calm settled over me. The family I'd always longed for, supportive, genuine, unconditionally loyal, had been forming slowly around me all along. Friends like Sasha, colleagues like Josie, and even Jason himself stepping into roles my parents had never fulfilled. But the fight wasn't over yet. The legal hearing loomed closer, and with it, the inevitable clash that would publicly unravel decades of buried family secrets. I dreaded the exposure, the brutal stripping away of all pretense, yet I knew it was necessary. Truth had to surface before genuine healing could begin. As the days dwindled, Nadine scheduled a pre-trial meeting with my parents' high-powered attorney, Philip Branson, a notoriously ruthless litigator famous for intimidation tactics and expensive suits. Facing him across the polished mahogany table in Nadine's conference room, I saw my parents' determination personified. Branson sneered confidently, laying out their demands in clinical detail. It's simple, Ms. Morgan. Hand over the house quietly, and we'll drop this embarrassing public dispute. Nadine leaned forward coolly. Embarrassing for whom exactly? The Morgan family who fraudulently concealed the property's history, or Randi, whose only mistake was succeeding despite relentless sabotage? Branson's smug expression faltered momentarily before quickly recovering. Your choice, Miss Morgan. Face humiliating public defeat, or walk away with your dignity intact. I straightened slowly, meeting his gaze steadily. My dignity isn't for sale. If my parents want to fight, they'll get one. The room fell silent, tension crackling between us. Branson smirked, gathering his papers theatrically. See you in court then. As he exited confidently, Nadine squeezed my shoulder reassuringly. You handled that beautifully, Randy. He's rattled. They didn't expect defiance. You're ready for this. I nodded firmly, feeling an odd surge of confidence. More ready than I've ever been. Walking out into the warm afternoon sunlight, I knew my parents had seriously miscalculated. Their attempts to destroy my independence had instead strengthened it, forcing me to define myself clearly, free of their twisted expectations. The sincerity in Jason's voice sent a rush of warmth through me, quieting the ache of lingering doubt. Thank you, I said softly, grateful beyond words. As we hung up, a strange sense of calm settled over me. The family I'd always longed for, supportive, genuine, unconditionally loyal, had been forming slowly around me all along. Friends like Sasha, colleagues like Josie, and even Jason himself, stepping into roles my parents had never fulfilled. But the fight wasn't over yet. The legal hearing loomed closer, and with it, the inevitable clash that would publicly unravel decades of buried family secrets. I dreaded the exposure, the brutal stripping away of all pretense. Yet I knew it was necessary. Truth had to surface before genuine healing could begin. As the days dwindled, Nadine scheduled a pre-trial meeting with my parents' high-powered attorney, Philip Branson, a notoriously ruthless litigator famous for intimidation tactics and expensive suits. Facing him across the polished mahogany table in Nadine's conference room, I saw my parents' determination personified. Branson sneered confidently, laying out their demands in clinical detail. It's simple, Ms. Morgan. Hand over the house quietly, and we'll drop this embarrassing public dispute. Nadine leaned forward coolly. Embarrassing for whom exactly? The Morgan family who fraudulently concealed the property's history, or Randi, whose only mistake was succeeding despite relentless sabotage? Branson's smug expression faltered momentarily before quickly recovering. Your choice, Ms. Morgan. Face humiliating public defeat, or walk away with your dignity intact. I straightened slowly, meeting his gaze steadily. My dignity isn't for sale. If my parents want to fight, they'll get one. The room fell silent, tension crackling between us. Branson smirked, gathering his papers theatrically. See you in court then. As he exited confidently, Nadine squeezed my shoulder reassuringly. You handled that beautifully, Randi. He's rattled. They didn't expect defiance. You're ready for this. I nodded firmly, feeling an odd surge of confidence. More ready than I've ever been. Walking out into the warm afternoon sunlight, I knew my parents had seriously miscalculated. Their attempts to destroy my independence had instead strengthened it, forcing me to define myself clearly, free of their twisted expectations. This was no longer just about defending my home. It was about reclaiming my story, rewriting the legacy they'd tried so hard to erase. And now, finally, I was ready for whatever came next. The courthouse loomed ahead of me, its marble facade glowing ominously under the harsh morning sun. I paused briefly at the steps, taking in the gravity of this moment, the culmination of years of quiet suffering, relentless effort, and unrecognized achievement. Now, in a place designed for cold impartiality, my family's dysfunction would finally be laid bare for everyone to see. Nadine waited for me near the entrance, her expression calm and reassuring as always. Ready to end this? She asked quietly. More than ready, I replied firmly, squaring my shoulders. Behind me, Jason approached cautiously, his face a blend of anxiety and quiet resolve. He offered a silent nod of solidarity, joining us as we stepped into the courtroom together. Inside, Dale and Sharon sat rigidly, flanked by Philip Branson, whose confident smirk betrayed his certainty of victory. My mother's eyes flickered briefly toward us, filled with fleeting sorrow or perhaps regret, before quickly averting her gaze. Dale stared straight ahead, his jaw set in stubborn defiance. As we settled at our table, Judge Patricia Reynolds entered, her authoritative presence immediately silencing the hushed whispers filling the room. After a swift introduction, proceedings began swiftly. Branson stood, oozing calculated charm as he detailed my parents' claims, twisting truths into convincing narratives designed to paint me as a scheming, bitter daughter, intent on sabotaging the family's legacy. Listening to their twisted version of events, my stomach churned. Their betrayal felt fresh all over again, yet I steadied myself, preparing for our counterattack. Nadine rose confidently, carefully dismantling their accusations with methodical precision. She presented meticulous documentation, every paycheck stub, bank statement, and transaction proving my independent financial path. She unveiled historical property records, clearly establishing that my parents relinquished all legal claims decades ago. Finally, she produced emails revealing deliberate interference by Dale in my scholarship opportunities, proving their systematic efforts to sabotage my success from the beginning. The courtroom murmured, stunned by the clarity of evidence, while Dale's stoic mask began to crack slightly under pressure. Branson scrambled to counter, but Nadine's thoroughness left no room for doubt. Then came Jason's turn to testify. The courtroom quieted expectantly as he approached the stand, visibly nervous yet steady. Under oath, he confirmed the lifelong imbalance in our treatment, our parents' explicit favoritism, and their manipulative strategies. He admitted his ignorance of their lawsuit, voicing disgust at their willingness to sacrifice familial bonds for control. As Jason finished, Dale exploded suddenly, his calm facade shattering violently. "Ungrateful, both of you," he snapped, rising abruptly. "After everything we've done." Judge Reynolds banged her gavel sternly, silencing him immediately. "Control yourself, Mr. Morgan. This is not your dining room." Branson's face paled, clearly unprepared for Dale's uncontrolled outburst. Across the room, Sharon shrank quietly into herself, humiliation evident. Finally, it was my turn. Taking the stand, I drew a deep, steady breath. Under Nadine's calm guidance, I told my story clearly and without embellishment. Years of quiet determination, invisible accomplishments, and hidden struggles. I described the painstaking effort behind every dollar saved, every late night spent studying, every milestone achieved without acknowledgement. My voice remained steady, even as emotions roared inside me. As I spoke, the courtroom gradually shifted, skepticism melting into empathy, then into admiration. Even the judge listened intently, recognizing the sincerity in my voice. When Branson attempted cross-examination insinuating jealousy and spite, I held my ground calmly, refuting each implication with quiet dignity. Finally, he withdrew, visibly frustrated and flustered. After a tense recess, Judge Reynolds returned swiftly with her ruling. Her voice resonated powerfully through the courtroom. Having reviewed all evidence presented today, it is abundantly clear that Ms. Morgan purchased the property legitimately, without deception or malice. The plaintiff's claims lack both legal merit and ethical credibility. Their lawsuit is hereby dismissed with prejudice. Relief surged through me, overwhelming in its intensity. Beside me, Nadine squeezed my hand warmly, smiling triumphantly. Jason offered a shaky but genuine smile of relief. However, Dale was not finished. As court adjourned, he stood abruptly, glaring directly at me. "You've disgraced this family, Randi," he hissed venomously. "Don't expect forgiveness." For a moment, silence reigned. Then, calmly, I faced him squarely. "I don't need forgiveness for something I'm proud of. You tried to control my life and failed. That's your disgrace, not mine." Turning from him, I left the courtroom, feeling lighter with every step. Outside, warm sunlight wrapped gently around me, chasing away the shadows I'd carried far too long. Jason joined me quietly, his voice gentle. "I'm proud of you, Randi. You were amazing in there." Emotion thickened my voice slightly. "Thank you for everything. I couldn't have done it without your support." He smiled, genuine warmth in his eyes. "It's long overdue, and no matter what happens next, I want us to rebuild something healthier." I nodded, profoundly grateful. Despite the courtroom victory, the true victory was in the relationship now slowly healing between us, one built on mutual respect, not parental manipulation. That evening, instead of celebrating extravagantly, I returned quietly to my home. As twilight settled, I sat on my porch steps, breathing deeply, savoring newfound freedom. Dale and Sharon had attempted to erase me, control me, mold me into their distorted vision, but in doing so they'd inadvertently revealed my strength. My phone buzzed softly, a message from Sasha. "You did it. Drinks tomorrow? Your real family can't wait to celebrate." I smiled warmly, typing a quick response. "Absolutely. Can't wait." Looking around the home I'd fought so fiercely to protect, I finally felt a profound sense of belonging, not dictated by family blood, but by the connections I'd consciously nurtured. My true family had always existed quietly, patiently waiting until I was ready to embrace them fully. In this calm after the storm, I finally understood my own worth, independent of anyone else's validation. The war was over, the battle won, and for the first time in my life, I was truly at peace with myself. Yet, the story wasn't done. Not quite yet. Now came the best part, rebuilding my life, reclaiming my legacy, and using this painful journey to help others find their strength. This home was no longer a symbol of struggle. It was my foundation for something new, powerful, and entirely mine. Tonight, my story wasn't about what I'd overcome. It was about who I'd become. In the days following the trial, my phone never stopped buzzing. Messages of support poured in from friends, colleagues, and even strangers who'd read about my case. But among the countless texts and emails, one stood out. A simple note from Sasha, inviting me to a casual dinner at her place. "Just friends, wine, and way too much food," she wrote warmly. "It's time you spend an evening surrounded by people who actually value you." Arriving at Sasha's cozy townhouse, I was met with comforting aromas of garlic, herbs, and freshly baked bread. Stepping inside felt like slipping into a warm embrace, surrounded by familiar laughter and genuine smiles. Sasha waved enthusiastically from the kitchen, her cheeks flushed from cooking. Felix, ever the joker, offered a playful bow as he handed me a glass of wine. Josie McGregor, my fiercely protective senior partner, appeared moments later, wrapping me in a quick but sincere hug. "Welcome back to sanity," she joked gently. "How does freedom taste?" "Better than expected," I replied honestly, the tension I'd carried slowly easing with each passing minute. Soon we gathered around Sasha's kitchen island, chatting effortlessly. The contrast between tonight's warmth and my recent family dinners was startling. Here, nobody jockeyed for dominance, nobody's accomplishments diminished another's. Instead, we celebrated small victories, shared laughter over ridiculous work anecdotes, and expressed genuine curiosity about each other's lives. Halfway through the evening, Jason arrived quietly, hesitating slightly at the doorway. Sasha immediately beckoned him inside, warmth radiating from her easy welcome. As he settled next to me, I could see him visibly relaxing, soaking in the comfort of genuine acceptance, something he'd unknowingly lacked just as deeply as I had. Josie leaned in with gentle curiosity. "Jason, what What's next for you? Career-wise, I mean. He shrugged slightly, a bit sheepish. Honestly, I'm starting fresh. Without Dad's influence, it feels intimidating, but freeing. I'm actually looking forward to figuring things out on my own. That's the best way, Felix said confidently. Trust me, nothing tastes better than success you've earned yourself. As conversation flowed easily around us, Jason glanced at me thoughtfully. Randy, this is what family is supposed to feel like, isn't it? I nodded slowly, feeling emotion rise. Exactly. Chosen family, built on respect, kindness, and genuine care. Late into the night, after everyone else had trickled home, Sasha and I sat quietly on her small patio, wrapped in blankets against the evening chill. The quiet hum of the city around us was comforting, a reminder of how far I'd come. You know, Sasha said thoughtfully, swirling wine in her glass, you never fully realize how toxic something is until you step away from it. I smiled ruefully. Or until you're forcibly pushed out. She laughed softly. Fair enough, but look at what you gained. A home, true friendships, and genuine freedom. They underestimated you, Randy, and that was their biggest mistake. Her words resonated deeply. For years I'd sought validation from parents incapable of giving it, desperate to be seen and valued. Now, surrounded by people who genuinely cared, I finally understood what I'd been chasing. Validation couldn't be earned from people determined to withhold it. True validation came naturally, freely offered by those who genuinely saw your worth. Returning home that night, my modest house stood welcomingly in the moonlight. Unfinished renovations temporarily forgotten. It wasn't just bricks and beams, it was evidence of my resilience, independence, and strength, qualities I'd never truly acknowledged until now. In the quiet solitude of my living room, I found myself drawn to a dusty box of family mementos tucked away during renovations. Carefully opening it, I discovered old photographs, my grandparents smiling warmly in front of this very home, holding hands lovingly. Their joy was palpable, untouched by the manipulation and bitterness that had come later. A faded handwritten note slipped out unexpectedly. Unfolding it carefully, I read my grandmother Vera's gentle handwriting. Love fiercely, build fearlessly, and always remember, you alone define your legacy. Tears blurred my vision as the words resonated deeply, echoing my own hard-earned truths. My grandparents, whom I'd never truly known, had unintentionally guided me toward reclaiming a legacy my parents had tried desperately to erase. My journey had begun painfully, defined by exclusion, struggle, and betrayal. But now, surrounded by genuine love and support, I'd finally begun building something beautiful from the ruins. Tonight wasn't about fighting battles, it was about embracing peace, connection, and the true family I'd found in those who chose to stand with me. The warmth in my heart felt like the comforting glow of a long-awaited homecoming. I knew the road ahead would still hold challenges, but the foundation I'd built, literally and figuratively, was stronger than ever. My family's bitterness no longer defined me. Instead, I'd chosen a legacy of authenticity, strength, and kindness. And that was something no one, not even Dale and Sharon, could ever take away. The weeks following that dinner brought clarity and a newfound sense of purpose. The legal victory was only the beginning. Now came the harder task, constructing ironclad boundaries to protect myself from further harm. I'd spent too many years bending under pressure, desperate for approval from those who withheld it as punishment. Now I was determined never to return to that emotional captivity again. My first step was straightforward, but symbolically powerful. I changed my number, cutting off direct communication from Dale and Sharon. Blocking them felt like lifting a heavy anchor, finally setting myself adrift into calmer, healthier waters. It wasn't an act of cruelty or spite, it was simple self-preservation. Nadine helped me draft formal letters, warning them clearly and legally against further contact or interference with my life or property. Signing those letters was strangely therapeutic, a definitive official declaration of my boundaries. Though the words were clinical and emotionless, their meaning resonated deeply. I'd reclaimed my autonomy. Professionally, boundaries also meant transparency. At Josie's suggestion, I met privately with the partners at my firm to clarify the details of my recent turmoil, ensuring rumors and half-truths couldn't tarnish my reputation. The firm's support was unanimous, affirming the professional respect I'd fought so hard to earn. In fact, several colleagues privately expressed admiration, confessing similar family struggles they'd never spoken about openly. No further threats arrived. As weeks turned into months, my home finally became a reflection of true independence, beautiful, inviting, and filled with tangible evidence of my hard-won peace. Each room held small reminders of the strength it had taken to arrive here, quietly affirming the boundaries I'd established to protect myself. One afternoon, sitting quietly in my newly finished sunroom, I received an unexpected visitor, my mother. Through the window, I saw Sharon standing nervously on the sidewalk, her posture small and uncertain. Hesitantly, I stepped outside, maintaining careful distance. She spoke first, her voice soft, almost timid. "I know I'm not supposed to be here. I understand if you want me to leave immediately." I hesitated, then replied cautiously, "Say what you need to say, Mom." She drew a shaky breath, eyes misty. "I never expected you to fight back so fiercely, and part of me, the part I'm finally admitting, is proud of you. You've become someone I never had the courage to be." My heart softened slightly, though I held firm. That courage came at a price you chose to impose. Sharon nodded sadly. "I know. I can't undo the damage. I just wanted you to know. I see you clearly now. Not as someone who disappointed us, but as someone who overcame us." Her words lingered heavily between us, complex emotions swirling. I didn't offer forgiveness. It wasn't mine to give yet, but perhaps understanding could be a beginning on my terms. As Sharon turned to leave quietly, I called gently after her, "Take care, Mom." She paused briefly, nodding softly. "You too, Randi." Watching her walk away, I felt neither victory nor loss, only quiet acceptance. The boundaries I'd established weren't walls, they were doorways I'd built, choosing consciously who could enter and under what conditions. Returning inside, the peace of my home enveloped me warmly. I finally understood boundaries as acts of profound kindness, offering protection and clarity for relationships built on genuine respect. I'd spent too many years in emotional warfare. Now, I was content to rest in this hard-earned peace, guarded fiercely by boundaries I'd carefully drawn. For the first time, I felt genuinely secure, not through isolation or defensiveness, but through thoughtful, intentional choices about who deserved space in my life. Here, within these walls I'd reclaimed, surrounded by chosen family and guarded by healthy boundaries, I finally felt truly, beautifully free. After months of intense personal upheaval, I finally felt steady enough to refocus my energy outward. My home was no longer a symbol of a bitter family feud. Instead, it had become a powerful reflection of resilience and renewal. With newfound clarity, I realized that the next step was to create something meaningful, not just for myself, but for others who had endured similar battles. At work, my career blossomed rapidly. Josie and the other partners enthusiastically supported my growth, assigning me to lead high-profile historical restoration projects, leveraging the experience I'd gained while renovating my own home. My designs began to appear in local architectural publications, praised not just for their elegance, but for the thoughtful way they honored the past while embracing the future. Unexpectedly, the public attention around my story turned into opportunities to mentor others facing family conflict and financial independence struggles. Invitations to speak at community forums, local colleges, and women's empowerment conferences arrived steadily, creating platforms for me to share openly about my journey and lessons learned. At one particularly impactful event, a gathering of aspiring professionals, I shared candidly about my experiences with family betrayal, isolation, and ultimately self-validation. Afterward, a young woman approached nervously, eyes glistening with tears. "Randi," she began softly, voice trembling slightly, "hearing your story made me realize I've been living my life waiting for approval I'll never get. Thank you for reminding me that my worth isn't tied to anyone else's acceptance." Her words stayed with me deeply, echoing my own realizations. This was the legacy I wanted, to help others reclaim their lives from toxic expectations, giving them strength and courage to build on their own terms. I soon launched a small nonprofit initiative named simply the Vera Project, in honor of my grandmother Vera's strength and quiet defiance. Its mission was clear, providing resources, mentoring, and practical support to young people, particularly women, struggling with familial conflicts, financial independence, and career pressures. Jason quickly became an enthusiastic supporter, volunteering to lead career workshops, helping participants network professionally without relying on family privilege. His presence signaled clearly to the community and to our parents that the Morgan legacy was being radically redefined. Sasha and Felix offered their skills to create a welcoming, supportive environment at events, becoming unofficial ambassadors of our mission. Josie used her professional network to connect participants with opportunities, turning once distant dreams into achievable goals. Together, we built something powerful, meaningful, and undeniably positive from the chaos of our past. One Saturday afternoon, I hosted a casual open house at my home to formally launch the Vera project. Familiar faces filled every corner, colleagues, friends, and community members all there to support our mission. Even the local media came, intrigued by the powerful narrative behind our work. Standing in front of everyone gathered in my renovated living room, I spoke openly, my voice steady and clear. This home once symbolized conflict and control. Today, it symbolizes healing and possibility. Our past shapes us, but it doesn't have to define us. I chose to reclaim my family's legacy, not by fighting old battles, but by creating something better, something genuine. Applause filled the room warmly, blending with the quiet hum of heartfelt conversation afterward. Jason approached with a smile, sincerity radiating from him. "Grandma Vera would have loved this," he said softly. "You've honored her beautifully." I squeezed his arm gently, smiling warmly. "We've honored her, together." As the afternoon faded into a gentle twilight, guests slowly departed, leaving quiet reflections behind. Sasha lingered briefly, hugging me tightly. "Proud of you doesn't even begin to cover it," she whispered warmly. "You've turned so much pain into something incredibly powerful." After everyone had gone, I stood quietly on the porch, watching evening settle over the neighborhood. My grandparents' home, now truly mine, was alive again, buzzing gently with hope, strength, and purpose. The turmoil of my parents' betrayal, once overwhelming, had finally faded into background noise, replaced by clarity, direction, and true self-worth. That night, alone in the peaceful quiet of my home, I received an unexpected message, this time from Dale. Hesitantly opening it, I read simply, "Randi, I've seen the work you're doing. Your grandmother would have been deeply proud. Perhaps one day we'll both understand." No apologies, no excuses, but in his quiet acknowledgement I felt a subtle shift. Not reconciliation, certainly not forgiveness, but at least recognition. Dale's pride meant little now. Not yet somehow his acknowledgement brought a quiet, final closure I'd never known I needed. Setting my phone aside, I felt a profound peace. The legacy my parents had tried to impose, a legacy of control and manipulation, had finally definitively been replaced by one of compassion, strength, and integrity. It was mine, reclaimed and reshaped on my terms, now shared openly with those who truly valued it. The shadows of the past no longer held power. Instead, I'd stepped boldly into a future defined entirely by the choices I'd made, the boundaries I'd drawn, the relationships I'd nurtured, and the legacy I'd consciously crafted. Here, within the walls of a home once weaponized against me, I'd built something unbreakably beautiful. An authentic life, fully mine, and a legacy my grandmother would have embraced proudly. Now I finally understood. True legacy wasn't passed down through inheritance or expectation. It was built, intentionally, every day, through genuine actions and unwavering strength. Tonight, my home wasn't just a structure. It was a testament to resilience, authenticity, and the transformative power of reclaiming one's story. As I settled into the peace of my reclaimed life, I found myself reflecting often on the journey that brought me here. The battles I'd faced, the losses I'd endured, and the victories I'd celebrated had woven themselves into a tapestry that defined who I had become. For the first time, the threads of pain and pride felt balanced, each necessary to reveal the true pattern of my strength. One quiet evening, after hosting another successful gathering for the Vera project, I found myself alone again, sitting comfortably on my porch as dusk gently softened the world around me. The warm breeze carried the scent of fresh flowers from the garden I'd planted myself, each bloom a tiny, vibrant symbol of growth and healing. My phone lit gently on the table. A simple text from Jason. "Thanks for teaching me strength, sis. Proud to call you family." A smile tugged at my lips as warmth blossomed in my chest. Our relationship, once fractured by manipulation and rivalry, had been painstakingly rebuilt on a foundation of honesty, trust, and mutual respect. Jason's message was more than just words. It was proof of the genuine bond we'd finally created, independent of our parents' toxic expectations. Yet, even now I recognized that my journey towards self-validation wasn't dependent on the approval of others, not even Jason's heartfelt acknowledgement. The true peace I'd found was internal, untouchable by anyone else's judgment or validation. This was the most profound victory of all. Quietly I wandered back inside, moving slowly through rooms I'd lovingly restored, spaces now filled with warmth, laughter, and genuine connection. Each carefully chosen piece of furniture, every restored fixture, was a testament to the journey I'd taken. My home was a physical reflection of the boundaries I'd built, the relationships I'd chosen, and the legacy I'd consciously shaped. Pausing by the fireplace, I picked up the faded photograph of my grandparents, Vera and Walter, smiling gently as they stood proudly outside this very house decades earlier. They looked serene, quietly content, their own struggles and triumphs hidden behind soft smiles. I saw myself in their resilience, felt deeply connected to their quiet defiance and strength. In that moment, clarity settled over me gently but powerfully. The battle I'd fought had never truly been about winning a house or even reclaiming a lost legacy. It had always been about defining myself beyond others' expectations, beyond external measures of success. I'd spent a lifetime seeking approval, validation, and recognition from those unwilling or incapable of offering it. Now, finally I understood. Genuine self-worth was not something to be earned or granted by anyone else. It was inherent, unshakable, and entirely mine to embrace. This realization filled me with profound peace, as if a weight I'd carried unknowingly had finally, permanently lifted. I was enough, always had been. My worth wasn't defined by the battles I'd fought or the victories I'd achieved, it simply existed, quietly and undeniably true. As night fell gently around me, I stepped onto my porch again, breathing deeply, savoring this newfound understanding. Stars glittered softly above, each tiny point of light a quiet reminder of resilience and beauty amidst darkness. Like them, my own journey shone gently, imperfect, challenging, but undeniably illuminating. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, fresh opportunities, and endless possibilities, but tonight I rested in a peace I'd earned completely, a quiet validation no one else could touch or diminish. My story wasn't one of simple triumph or neatly resolved endings. It was richer, deeper, and infinitely more authentic. I had not merely overcome my family's betrayal, I had transcended it, turning pain into purpose, struggle into strength, invisibility into genuine visibility. I was Randi Morgan, not defined by the family who'd tried to erase me, but by the choices I'd made, the relationships I'd nurtured, and the boundaries I'd fiercely protected. This, at last, was true freedom, the peace of knowing that my worth, my legacy, and my story belonged solely to me. Have you ever felt unseen or undervalued by the very people meant to support you? If my journey resonated with you, please share your stories in the comments below. Remember, the strength you carry within is more powerful than anyone else's expectations or judgments. If this message reached you at the right moment, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this with someone who needs to hear that it's absolutely okay, vital, even, to define success and worth on your own terms. Your story matters. Your voice matters, and your worth has never depended on anyone else's approval. Keep building your own legacy, one courageous step at a time.